Hey everyone, welcome to another Mastering the Draw license application strategy video. We're putting together here at Huntin Fool, trying to better educate and inform people about their draw options or the lack thereof in some of these different states, different species, draw tips, just strategies going forward in general. Today we're going to be talking about Colorado elk. And Colorado is one of my all-time favorite states to hunt, especially when it comes to elk. I know it's not the most trophy-ridden state in the West as far as 350, 370 bulls. But as far as opportunity goes, in my mind, it's the leader. I mean, it really is the leader. And it still is home. I mean, you can kind of argue and say Utah has an over-the-counter tag for archery, but as far as true quotaless or limitless number of tags for non-residents, Colorado is still in that boat. Might not be for long, but they're still there. And they have tons of elk, huge population, lots of opportunity. We're going to kind of look at some of those opportunities today. So we'll be going over draw tags versus over-the-counter tags. Just kind of the differences between the two, what to expect out of a draw hunt versus an over-the-counter hunt, just things like that. Then we're going to jump into when do I have enough points? Like, what is that stopping point or that stop sign where I'm like, okay, now I have enough points, I'm going to go on this hunt. So we'll kind of talk about a few things to look for when you're trying to decide that. Realistic goal for trophy quality or size over there. And it's going to vary from other states. So we're just going to, look at this through the context of what Colorado has to offer. So first things first, draw versus over the counter. So one important thing to remember is all muzzleloader, first and fourth rifle hunts in Colorado on a draw basis. Now, some of those hunts can roll over into over-the-counter tags as far as once they get to the leftover. Then you can just go online, buy them, and go on the hunt. But understand that all of these seasons started out as draw hunts, and a lot of them won't make it to the leftover draw. So when we dive into what your expectations should be for a draw hunt, the first thing is trophy quality depending on from 0 to 10, I really wouldn't, put a high emphasis on, man, I'm really getting, a light years better hunt as far as trophy quality goes over and over the counter hunt. Because most of those hunts from 0 to 5, they're probably going to be either limited only for archery and they're over the counter for second and third rifle, or they're limited for, the muzzleloader first, fourth, and they're over the counter for archery second and third. Those are largely going to be those 0 to 5 point units. There's a few that slip in there, especially archery wise, that you can draw from 2 to 4 points that might elevate that from, top end bulls being in at 300 to 310 to possibly top end bulls being 320 to 340. There's always a few exceptions that slip through the cracks regardless on these over-the-counter hunts. I mean, gosh dang, we've seen bulls come in at 340 to 360 on over-the-counter hunts, and those bulls just flat shouldn't be there, but it happens. So I don't want to totally negate the fact that there is some good trophy potential in some of these units, but that's definitely the exception and not the rule. So hunting pressure is what realistically you're going to see for the most part. Now, one thing to make note of is the muzzleloader hunts that are on a draw basis. If they're over-the-counter archery, I don't really put them in the same class as a true draw hunt. Yes, that is a draw to get that muzzleloader tag, but hunting pressure isn't going to change that much if you start looking at, all right, well, it's still over-the-counter archery, and, oh, by the way, these seasons overlap, so you're still going to have a fair number of hunters and hunting pressure in the field. So I don't really count that. What I do count is like that first, fourth rifle, and then any unit that has a limited quota or a limited number of tags for every season. Then you're going to see a pretty significant difference in the amount of hunting pressure that you can see versus like an over-the-counter second or third rifle where there's just, there's hunters on every single glassing knob, and most of the country, even when you hike in, you'll see rows of hunters or guys on horseback coming up. It's not terrible, but just understand that there's a lot of hunting pressure over the counter versus some of these in the draw areas. Expectation for over-the-counter hunt. I mean, pretty much the same thing, I mean, that we just talked about, only in the over-the-counter units. Trophy quality. If someone asked me, okay, what should my expectations be for an over-the-counter hunt, for the size of the bull I should see? Probably what I'm going to say is a branch antler bull, because 90% of the bulls harvested on an over-the-counter unit most likely are 2 to 3 years old. There's always some exceptions, as I mentioned before, but if you find a nice 6-point bull that's in that, I don't know, 270 to 300, man, that's a stud bull. You should be proud of that all day, every day. I mean, any bull anymore in an over-the-counter unit is a nice bull. So just a legal bull, that's where your expectations should sit, unless you've harvested a lot of elk and, you know, you're okay just enjoying the scenery and running the chance that you might not kill a bull, but yeah, you might find one of those better than average bulls too. Hunting pressure. This is the game changer between the draw and over-the-counter hunts. There is so many people that go to Colorado every year and get there and they hit just this army of hunters at trailheads, in the backcountry, you know, driving on side by side, driving their truck, just everywhere. The big thing is they have overlapping hunts with deer. So not all of the hunting pressure is coming directly from elk hunters, but they overlap all of their hunts. So once you get their second and third rifle season, there's a ton of people in the unit that'll have deer tags, a ton of people in the unit that will have elk tags. Just understand that when you go there, expect to see hunters, expect to see them mile, 2 mile, 5 miles back in there. You'll probably distance yourself a little bit from the vast majority, but just expect to see hunters. That's going to be a common occurrence. How many points do I need? This is a question that really you should have figured out what your expectation level is for the elk you're going to be hunting over there. This is going to dictate a lot of how many points you need and once you can finally cash it in. So now let's jump into which season is the easiest to draw. On average, everything equal, archery is going to be the easiest one. But, you know, we're talking, if we look at 66, archery is taking non-residents 7 points to draw. The second and third rifle, we're at, you know, anywhere from 1 to 2 points. It's a little different because they restrict the number of permits on average in that unit. So, like I say, 9 times out of 10, typically the archery is easier, but you always have those special circumstances that can come into play that might shift that a little bit. But on average, archery is easiest. And a big thing that I like to preach is ask the right questions if you want to get the right answers. Basically what I'm meaning by that is when you go in to decide what hunts or when you should cash in your points, you got to ask yourself the right questions. Like, what other states are you going to be hunting in? Is Wyoming coming up 2 years from now that you have scheduled? Are you in line to draw a Montana archery tag next year for elk? You know, how close are you to drawing these other states? And then you can kind of look and bring Colorado elk into that rotation. And for most of you out there, you probably have a multi-state rotation that you're looking at. And so that's one of the first questions I ask myself is, can I even go on a hunt this year if I draw it? And where that's a true preference point state in Colorado, you can kind of balance that out and say, well, I know I can get this tag in the next year or two, as long as it doesn't, you know, conflict with other states I'm going to be hunting, go ahead and do it. And then what kind of hunt do you want? You know, I mean, there's all different types of hunts available. And when I'm saying that, what I'm saying, like, do I want a backpack hunt? Do I want a horseback? Do I just want to pull up, unload the tent, and then hunt out of that and go however far during that day and then return back at night? These are all questions you need to ask yourself because there's going to be different units that are going to be better for that type of hunting. Also guided, self-guided. You know, there's a lot of semi-guided opportunities over there where you have drop camps, trespass fees, things like that that are available, and that's going to change your units as well. So these are all things to take into consideration when you start looking at what units are available, how many points it's going to take you to draw those units, and what season's gonna fit your schedule best. And then last, trophy quality. You know, as I started out this presentation, trophy quality is different in Colorado. It's not like I'm comparing Colorado, a 10-point unit or a 10-point hunt, to Utah in a 10-point hunt, or Arizona's a 10-point hunt. It's two different states. They manage their game differently. So trophy quality is something you should consider, but on a different level. 300 class bulls, 320 class bulls. Honestly, even for the best units in the state, you know, 320 to 340 is a stud bull. That's a solid bull. So look at trophy quality, but just put it in the context of it's Colorado, and just because you got 17 points doesn't mean you're gonna get the same hunt that you would get in Arizona for 17. So trophy quality is last, but certainly not least. You know, to kind of spin into this next segment, the size really matter. You know, if we start looking at the difference in the hardest to draw units versus the easiest to draw units or hunts, you start to kind of find out that maybe getting 25 points or 35 points by the time you get up to there wasn't such a great idea. And the reason I say that is because once you look at the overall trophy quality, and let's even take the northwest part of the state where it's taking right now 28 points to get a rifle tag up there. If you're under that, you ain't getting it. You're just not getting that tag. There is some big bulls in that country, 350 plus, but most of the bulls in that area and most of the bulls taken in that area on those archery, muzz, and early rifle hunts probably going to be somewhere in that 320 to 340 range. I could argue and say that for 2 to 5 points, you could have got into a hunt where, yeah, you might not have had that 350 plus potential. There's still a few bulls out there like that, but realistically, you're probably going to be in the bulls 310, 320. You know, that's going to be some better top end bulls for those units, but we're only talking about 20 or 30 inches here. So overall, if you were to hunt those areas, you know, 15 times in 28 years versus one time in 28 years, I think the likelihood of you scoring on a big mature bull elk is definitely going to favor those 2 to 3 point hunts. So size really doesn't matter when we start to look at the overall, you know, numbers of big bulls versus small bulls when it comes to hard to draw and easy to draw areas. Over-the-counter units. Honestly, there's not much difference in over-the-counter elk units. There is if you know it. You know, if you know that unit, you know, very well or intimately, you're going to be way better off in that over-the-counter unit than you ever were in one that you're just figuring out. You know, think back about the units that you just dove into. You always come out of those hunts knowing way more, thinking, man, if I could get back in here next year, I could do way better and do this more justice. Well, it's no different with over-the-counter units. So as far as size difference in this unit from that unit, there might be one that's doing a little better this year versus next year. But overall, it really comes down to which unit do you know best? And that's going to be the better unit for the better size. So now I want to touch a little bit on the size difference between over-the-counter and draw hunts. As I mentioned earlier, there's not a ton of difference when it comes to the overall size. Now, what you are going to gain in some of these really highly sought after that only issue very few tags, yes, that top end is going to be there, where it's just not really going to be hitting for those over-the-counter units. But if I kind of put them a little bit closer or move that, you know, margin a little bit closer and say, all right, what do I get for 0 to 10 points to over-the-counter? Honestly, quality is going to improve a little. Instead of seeing a lot of 2 to 3 year old bulls, you're going to see a lot of 3 to 4 year old bulls. But that extreme next level, like, okay, well, this is a mature bull. This thing's 5, 6 years old. He's, you know, kind of king of the hill in here. You can run into those types of bulls on both over the counter and these 0 to 10 point draw areas. It's just, you're going to have a lot more interaction with bulls leading up to that encounter with that next level old mature bull than you would have in an over-the-counter area. So don't get too hung up on the size difference. The biggest difference is going to be hunter pressure. Non-resident pricing. And this is where it comes into play. Like, okay, if I want to play the game for 10 years or 20 years or however long you want to go, what's this going to cost me? Is it worth it to continue to build points for 15 years for maybe a chance at a 20 to 30 inch bigger bull? So you're going to have to purchase a qualifying hunting license. Right now, the small game hunting license is the cheapest option at $84.96. So just to apply in the draw and to get that point, or to apply for a tag, you're going to have to buy that. The next thing you're going to have to get is a $10.40 habitat stamp. Now you only have to buy one of these per year, so you don't have to have one for each species you apply for. So once you get that, you're just going to have to get it at the time that your application. You get one and you're done. It's kind of a ticky-tack little charge, but you do have to get it. Now the adult price is $688.26. You don't have to pay that at the time of application. The other ones you do. They only charge you that if you draw. So that is kind of nice. They're not charging you that upfront tag fee and then refunding it to you. The youth, they give a pretty good break to. It's $105.51, and that's for that, elk fish combo, the same thing. And basically they threw in that combo fishing license as an added bonus because they're hitting you for some pretty steep fees. And last, the $9 application fee. So if you go in and apply, once you've bought that qualifying license, paid your habitat stamp, it's a $9 app fee to put your name in the hat for a hunt or just to get a point. And that goes for deer and antelope as well. So if you are planning on building points for elk over there or planning on putting in for a while, go ahead and pay $9 extra for each one of those species and, get a point for them as well, because it's only $18 more. You can also put in for the desert sheep. It's a long shot, and I know we're talking about elk, but man, for $9, you can get your name in the hat, and it's one of the cheapest app fees there is if you're already applying for other species. So, hope you learned a little bit about Colorado elk and the different dynamics that go into a draw hunt versus over the counter, just how long you got to apply for. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comment section below. We'll do our best to get back with you on a prompt manner. And if you found this video helpful, man, subscribe, tell your friends. We'll be here for you.